Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm glad to be able to participate in this debate today, and I want to thank the member for Hornsey and Wood Green for bringing this important debate forward about support for children in receipt of free school meals. And what we're really talking about, of course, is child poverty, and only on Tuesday we had quite a similar debate to the one we're having today. And Tuesday I pointed out the chilling similarities between the current welfare arrangements as they are today and the kind of support that was offered to the poorest in society in the new Poor Law of 1834. Now, I know some people will scoff at that comparison, but actually I'm willing to sit down with anybody and talk them through the similarities, which really are quite striking. And as delighted as I am to see the Minister in her place, it is quite telling that when you have debates about child hunger and child poverty, it seems that no minister in the DWP is prepared to stand up and defend the policies in their own department. And I think that those watching, as well as those participating, will draw their own conclusions from that. We know that some children, for some children, the free school meal that they receive in the school day is maybe the only proper meal, the only hot meal that they will have on that particular day. And we also know that only a third of children who claim free school meals achieve 5 or more good GCSE grades or equivalent, compared to 2/3 of children whose families are in better circumstances. And this is not surprising, given that underneath the free school meal figures is the more pernicious challenge of child poverty, which free school meals alone cannot even begin to address. Now, in Scotland, the SNP Government is expanding free school breakfasts and lunches to every primary school pupil and every child in state-funded special schools. That way, there is no stigma and no child will fall through the net. Best Start food payments across Scotland are increasing to £4.50 per week, and eligibility will increase by about 50% to all in receipt of universal credit. And there is a tale here of two governments, because while the UK Government scrapped targets to reduce child poverty, in Scotland the SNP Government has set ambitious targets to try to work to eradicate child poverty. The Scottish child payment of £10 per week per child for those on qualifying benefits will increase to £20 per week per child, assisting 450,000 children across Scotland. Something that the Child Poverty Action Group in Scotland has a measure that they've paid tribute to. But meanwhile, the UK Government's mean-spiritedness is laid bare as it refuses to commit to retaining the £20 uplift in universal credit for the poorest families, and scrapping targets to reduce child poverty whilst presiding over a rise in child poverty. And with a Prime Minister, and it gives me no pleasure to say so, but with a Prime Minister who doesn't even seem to be aware that child poverty is rising. And that will not inspire confidence in my constituents in North Ayrshire and Arran, nor in any other constituency, I would imagine. But while the SNP Scottish Government is doing all it can to tackle this social ill with all the limited powers that it has, 85% of control over welfare is reserved to the Westminster Government, and that is where the real solutions can be found if there is political will to implement them. But we know that the current welfare system doesn't fulfil its avowed aim. Apart from the fact that in the last year the Trussell Trust delivered a food parcel every 2.5 minutes, apart from that, if the goal of welfare is to support and assist those who are able to work to re-enter the job market, then it seems that it is not fulfilling its goal. Otherwise, there would be no 5-week wait for support. There would be no advance payments, which force those who eventually receive universal credit and are therefore living on or beyond the breadline to be deemed capable of paying back these advance payments, throwing claimants further and further into financial despair and further away from the job market. And I've said this to the Minister before, so it won't surprise her to hear me say it again. No reputable lender of money would lend money to somebody on universal credit because they understand they don't have the means to repay that loan. And yet, for the DWP, it's quite happy to lend money to claimants in the full knowledge that the attempts to repay it will put their client, their claimant, in deep financial distress. Why on earth would you design a system along those principles? And even now in 2021, we know about the disgrace of children in our communities going to school hungry. Now, we know that free school meals are really important, but we also know we need to do more to address the deep poverty that too many children currently live in. And we know it goes well beyond the material. And of course, most children living in poverty have at least one parent in work, and I wonder if the Minister at all is disturbed by that. And we also know, although we lack the political will in the Westminster Government, we also know that there are things we can do to address some of the really pernicious problems that are aggravating and fixing child poverty in a very stubborn way. We could replace advance payments, which are loans and which people can't pay back without real hardship. We could get rid of the 5-week wait, and we could actually talk about a real living wage as opposed to the wee pretendy living wage that is currently trumpeted by the UK government. And I don't know if anybody in this debate shares my shock and horror about the Prime Minister today in Prime Minister's questions saying that child poverty was falling. One of the many reasons why that is so disturbing is because only this week the DWP released figures showing that 4.3 million children are living in relative poverty in the UK the year 1919 to 1920, an increase from 4.1 million in the previous year, amounting to 1 in 3 children, 31% of children living in poverty. And these statistics predate the pandemic, so we know that the figures are even higher as we sit in this chamber. We also know of the serious impact that living in poverty has on children's well-being. Disadvantaged children are 4.5 times more likely to develop severe mental health problems by age 11 than their well-off peers. Children in poor housing are more at risk of respiratory illnesses and meningitis. Those in the most disadvantaged areas can expect 20 fewer years of good health than children in places with more resources and affluence. And I wonder if the Minister finds that as disturbing as I do. We know there's a direct correlation between poverty and underattainment at school. So if we don't tackle child poverty with every weapon in our armoury, if we don't do that, we can forget tackling the attainment gap. As we've heard, school closures during the pandemic have hit the most deprived children hardest and undoubtedly will widen an already worrying attainment gap, especially in the short term. So I look forward to hearing what new and additional poverty measures that the Minister thinks can be brought forward in view of the decisive impacts that poverty has on educational attainment. Not tackling poverty is a significant cost to the state, so I hope that the Minister's plans for preventative spending to tackle child poverty will be revealed to us today, because this would be the wisest and the most humane course of action.